The sliding glass door stood closed. The boots were gone. In the kitchen where laughter had echoed just minutes before, there was only silence. At 10:01 a.m. on May 2, 2025, Malihia Brooks Murray dialed 911 from her rural home on Gairloch Road in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. Her voice carried the kind of panic that emergency dispatchers recognize immediately. 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan had vanished. The property around them stretched into dense wilderness, thick brush climbing steep banks, the kind of terrain where even experienced adults lose their bearings. By 10:27 a.m., RCMP officers arrived at a scene that would launch one of Canada's most intensive missing persons investigations. Before we dive deeper into what happened that morning, if you care about missing children cases and want to stay updated on developments like this, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications for the Case Files Collective. We bring you verified, thoroughly researched true crime coverage. And drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from today. What began as a mother's worst nightmare that Friday morning would evolve into a mystery that has gripped a nation for 8 months. Over 1,000 tips poured in. More than 8,000 videos were scrutinized. 160 searchers deployed across unforgiving landscape. Yet despite an unprecedented effort involving multiple agencies, specialized dogs, drones equipped with thermal imaging, and helicopters sweeping from above, not a single confirmed trace of the children has emerged. Where are Lilly and Jack Sullivan? 2 days before the world would know their names, Lilly and Jack Sullivan were just ordinary kids doing ordinary things. April 30, 2025, seemed unremarkable in every way. The family made a trip to the Dollarama store in New Glasgow that afternoon, picking up household items like countless other families across Nova Scotia. Security cameras captured them at 2:25 p.m., moving through the aisles together. Malihia Brooks Murray pushed a shopping cart while her partner, Daniel Martel, walked alongside. Their 1-year-old daughter sat in the cart's child seat. Lilly and Jack walked beside them, occasionally reaching for items on shelves the way children do. The footage shows nothing unusual, nothing that would suggest this would be the last time anyone outside the family could verify the children were alive and well. They arrived back at their Lansdowne Station home by 10:19 p.m. that evening. The next day, May 1, both children stayed home from school. Lilly had developed a cough, and the parents decided to keep them both in. It was a Thursday, and the household settled into what appeared to be a quiet, uneventful day. Neighbors saw nothing concerning. No one heard anything alarming. The property sat in rural isolation, surrounded by the kind of wilderness that defines much of Nova Scotia's landscape. As night fell on May 1, the Sullivan household went to bed with no indication that by morning, everything would change forever. Malihia Brooks Murray woke that morning with no sense of the horror about to unfold. She and Daniel Martel had been dozing in bed with their 1-year-old daughter, the kind of lazy Friday morning that families with young children know well. She heard sounds. The familiar noises of Lilly and Jack playing in the next room drifted through the walls. It was comforting, that soundtrack of childhood. She closed her eyes again, drifting back toward sleep. When she woke the second time, something felt wrong. The house had gone silent. That particular silence that parents recognize instinctively, the kind that makes your heart skip before your mind fully processes why. She got up. Checked the children's room. Empty beds. She called their names. No response. She moved through the house, room by room, calling louder now. Daniel joined the search, both of them moving faster, voices rising with each unanswered call. The front door had a wrench placed on top of it from the night before. It remained undisturbed, exactly where they'd left it. If the children had gone out that way, the wrench would have fallen. That meant they must have left through the back sliding glass door. Outside, the wilderness pressed in from all sides. Dense forest, thick undergrowth, terrain that swallowed sound and sight within yards. 2 small children in that vastness. At 10:01 a.m., Malihia grabbed her phone and dialed 911. Her call launched a response that would involve hundreds of people, thousands of hours, and a search effort that continues to this day. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of that 911 call, Lansdowne Station transformed into a command center for one of the largest missing persons searches Nova Scotia had ever seen. By May 3, at least 100 searchers had mobilized. Ground crews moved through the dense wilderness surrounding the Sullivan property, calling the children's names, checking every hollow, every clearing, every place two small bodies might have sought shelter or fallen. Trained search dogs worked the scent trails, their handlers watching for any sign of interest, any indication the animals had picked up something human. Drones equipped with thermal imaging cameras swept overhead, their operators scanning monitors for heat signatures that might indicate life in the underbrush. Police helicopters joined the aerial search, covering wider territory, looking for any flash of pink or blue that might be a child's clothing against the green and brown landscape. The terrain fought them at every turn. Steep banks made footing treacherous. Thick brush obscured visibility to mere feet in some areas. The wilderness here wasn't the gentle, walkable forest of children's stories. It was real Nova Scotia backcountry, the kind that challenges experienced hikers. Hit that like button right now if you're following this case closely. It helps the algorithm show this to more people who might have information. And tell us in the comments, what time is it where you are? Let's see how far this story has reached. By May 4, the search force had grown to 160 people. Yet despite the scale, despite the technology, despite the dedication, no confirmed sightings emerged. On May 7, just 5 days after the children vanished, police made the difficult decision to scale back the active search. The first real piece of evidence came in the form of something that should have brought comfort but instead deepened the mystery. A pink blanket that belonged to Lilly was discovered, but not in the way anyone expected. The blanket had been torn in two pieces. One piece was found near the home, close to where the children had supposedly wandered off. The second piece turned up in the trash. This wasn't a blanket that had snagged on a branch during a panicked run through the woods. This was deliberately separated, with one half discarded as garbage. Investigators photographed the pieces, documented their locations, and sent them for forensic analysis. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. Why would a blanket be torn? Why would half end up in the trash if the children had simply wandered into the wilderness? As spring turned to summer and summer faded toward fall, the RCMP brought in specialized resources. In September 2025, cadaver dogs arrived to search a 40-kilometer area. These weren't ordinary search dogs. These animals were trained specifically to detect the scent of human decomposition, even when remains are buried or submerged. The dogs and their handlers worked methodically through the property, along pipeline trails, and in the area where the blanket pieces had been found. Everyone waited for the signal that would indicate the dogs had detected something. That signal never came. The cadaver dogs found nothing. Their handlers reported that the animals showed no interest in any location, suggesting they had never been in the presence of human remains or anywhere in the search area. As investigators dug deeper into the Sullivan family's background, a disturbing picture began to emerge. This wasn't the idyllic family home that the initial reports might have suggested. Behind closed doors, there were problems. Serious problems that had drawn official attention even before the children disappeared. The Globe and Mail published reporting that revealed troubling details about life inside the Sullivan household. Daniel Martel, the children's stepfather, had admitted to drug abuse. This wasn't casual experimentation. This was substance use serious enough that it affected the family dynamic and raised concerns among those who knew them. Teachers at the elementary school where Lilly and Jack attended had noticed something else. The children came to school with black eyes. Not once, but multiple times. When asked how they got the injuries, the explanations were vague, inconsistent, the kind of answers that make educators uncomfortable. There were other signs too. Controlling behavior that affected the children's mother. Financial struggles that created constant stress in the home. The kind of pressure that can make people desperate, that can push them toward decisions they might not otherwise make. Most significantly, a provincial child protection social worker had visited the home before the disappearance. Someone had filed a report of suspected abuse or neglect. The social worker came to investigate, to assess whether the children were safe in that environment. What that worker found, what was documented in those confidential reports, remains sealed. But the visit itself speaks volumes. If you're disturbed by what you're hearing, you should be. These are real children we're talking about. Real lives that were at risk. Make sure you're subscribed to the Case Files Collective so you don't miss any updates as this investigation continues. Hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. The RCMP interviewed the social worker. They spoke with teachers. They talked to neighbors and family members, piecing together a picture of what life was really like for Lilly and Jack Sullivan in the days and weeks before they vanished. In the early morning hours of May 3, just past midnight, Malihia Brooks-Murray made another call to police. This time, she had a theory about what might have happened to her children. She told investigators that Cody Sullivan, the children's biological father, might have taken them across the border to New Brunswick. It was a lead that had to be pursued immediately. If the children had been abducted by a parent, every minute mattered. The faster police could locate them, the better chance they had of bringing them home safely. Time was critical in any abduction scenario. At 2:50 a.m., RCMP officers arrived at Cody Sullivan's residence. They knocked on his door in those dark hours before dawn, ready to search the property if necessary, ready to bring the children home if they were there. Cody Sullivan answered their questions. He told them he hadn't seen Lilly and Jack in 3 years. There had been a complete breakdown in the relationship between him and Malihia. Whatever had happened between them had resulted in him being completely cut out of his children's lives. The officers looked around. They assessed his demeanor, his responses, the credibility of his statements. They found no evidence that the children were there or had been there recently. But police didn't stop with that initial interview. They brought Cody Sullivan in for a polygraph examination. Polygraph tests aren't perfect. They're not admissible in court as definitive proof of truth or deception. But they're a tool that investigators use to help narrow their focus, to determine which leads deserve more attention and which can be safely ruled out. Cody Sullivan sat through the examination. He answered the questions while the machine monitored his physiological responses, looking for signs of deception. The results came back clear. He had passed. The examiner's opinion was that his answers had been truthful. He hadn't taken the children. He didn't know where they were. This theory, which had seemed promising enough to warrant a middle-of-the-night police visit, was quickly eliminated. The RCMP's Northeast Nova Major Crime Unit took control of the investigation, and what followed was a level of investigative effort that few cases ever receive. This wasn't a cursory look at the evidence and a hope that the children would turn up. This was exhaustive, methodical police work on a scale that stretched across months. More than 1,000 tips flooded into the RCMP hotline. Each one had to be assessed, categorized, and investigated. Some were credible sightings that required immediate follow-up. Others were well-meaning but ultimately unhelpful speculation. A few were from people with mental health issues or those seeking attention. But every single tip had to be reviewed because buried somewhere in that mountain of information might be the one detail that cracked the case wide open. Investigators launched a video canvass of Lansdowne Station and surrounding areas. They collected footage from businesses, homes, traffic cameras, and any other source that might have captured something relevant. The result was approximately 8,100 video files that needed to be reviewed. Officers sat for hours watching grainy footage, looking for any vehicle, any person, any movement that seemed out of place on May 1 or the early morning hours of May 2. More than 60 people were brought in for formal interviews. These weren't casual conversations. These were detailed, recorded sessions where investigators asked specific questions, probed inconsistencies, and gathered sworn statements that could later be used in court if charges were ever filed. Family members, neighbors, teachers, social workers, anyone who had contact with the Sullivan family in the weeks before the disappearance found themselves sitting across from experienced detectives. Forensic examination of materials located through searches consumed countless hours in laboratories. Every item collected from the property had to be catalogued, tested, and analyzed. The RCMP superintendent overseeing the case, a man with 33 years of policing experience, called it extremely rare. In more than 3 decades of investigating crimes, he had never seen anything quite like this. As the months dragged on without answers, perspectives began to shift. The initial story about children wandering into the woods started to feel less plausible to those who knew the facts. The sheer scale of the search effort, combined with the lack of any trace, forced people to reconsider what they thought they knew. In October 2025, a vigil was held to mark Jack's 5th birthday. It should have been a celebration with cake and presents and the chaos of children playing. Instead, it was a somber gathering of people holding candles and hoping for a miracle. Daniel Martel attended and spoke to reporters there. What he said was striking because it represented a complete reversal from his earlier positions. He told them he no longer believed the children were in the woods near the home. Given all the searches that had been conducted, given how thoroughly the area had been covered by trained professionals with dogs and drones and helicopters, he found it implausible that they were still out there waiting to be found. If they had wandered off and succumbed to the elements, surely someone would have found remains by now. He also said something else that caught attention. He no longer suspected Malihia Brooks Murray, the children's mother, of being involved in their disappearance. This was significant because Martel had previously suggested that very theory. He had pointed fingers at his partner, the mother of his youngest child, implying she might know more than she was telling. Now he was walking that back, saying he didn't believe she was responsible. Both parents had repeatedly denied any involvement in whatever happened to Lilly and Jack. They had submitted to polygraph examinations. Court documents later revealed that both had been found truthful on all 4 questions they were asked, though those specific questions were never disclosed to the public. Meanwhile, volunteers continued searching. An Ontario-based charity called Please Bring Me Home organized search efforts in November. Their coordinator made a telling observation after examining the area. Based on the number of tags and ribbons marking locations that had already been searched, he said he was increasingly skeptical that the children had wandered into the woods at all. 8 months have passed since Lilly and Jack Sullivan disappeared, and the mystery remains as impenetrable as the wilderness that surrounds their former home. The RCMP continues to work the case actively, insisting that they are making progress even if the public cannot yet see the results of that work. In August 2025, court documents revealed something that surprised many following the case. As of July 16, the RCMP no longer considered the investigation to be criminal in nature. This didn't mean they had ruled out foul play entirely. It simply meant that at that moment, with the evidence they had in hand, they could not definitively say a crime had been committed. Authorities stated there was no evidence the children were abducted, but they also emphasized they had not ruled out the possibility that the disappearance was suspicious. Staff Sergeant Rob McCommon, the acting officer in charge of major crime and behavioral science, spoke to reporters about the emotional toll of the case. He said this wasn't the kind of file that investigators just picked up in the morning and put down at the end of their shift. It stayed with them. It followed them home. It kept them awake at night. The faces of those 2 children, smiling in photographs taken before they vanished, haunted everyone working to find them. The government of Nova Scotia recognized the urgency and importance of finding answers. They announced a reward of up to $150,000 for information deemed to be of investigative value. That's substantial money, the kind of incentive that could motivate someone with knowledge to finally come forward. Sometimes people stay silent out of misplaced loyalty or fear. A 6-figure reward can change that calculation. Before we wrap up, I need you to do something. If you care about finding Lilly and Jack Sullivan, if you want justice for these children, subscribe to the Case Files Collective right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on all notifications, and smash that like button. Share this video with everyone you know. The more people who know this story, the more pressure there is to find answers. Drop a comment below telling us what you think happened. What's your theory? Belinda Gray, the children's paternal grandmother, remains hopeful as we move into 2026. Despite very little evidence being found regarding their whereabouts, she believes the saga is close to being solved. She holds on to hope even as the calendar pages turn and seasons change without her grandchildren coming home. If you have any information about Lilly and Jack Sullivan, contact the Northeast Nova RCMP Major Crime Unit at 902-896-5060. You can also reach Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers anonymously at 1-800-222-8477. Even the smallest detail could be the key that unlocks this entire mystery. Don't assume someone else has already reported what you know. Make the call. Lilly and Jack Sullivan deserve to be found. Their family deserves answers. And the community of Lansdowne Station deserves to know what happened on that May morning when 2 children vanished without a trace. Until they're found, we'll keep telling their story. We'll keep demanding answers. We'll keep the pressure on until justice is served. Thank you for watching the Case Files Collective. I'll see you in the next case.